Welcome, everybody, to the American Space Museum. I'm Marquette, and we're so glad you're with us to stay curious. Sorry we're a couple minutes late today, but always hang with us because we're going to come on and give you a wonderful program that you're not going to get anywhere else because our board of directors loves doing this and helping you stay curious. It's something that Marty Winkle and I, my cameraman and co producer who's behind doing the board today, we started this at the encouragement of our executive director, Karen Conklin, in March 2020. And today we have a wonderful program celebrating the 49th anniversary of Apollo 17 headed to the moon on this date and time. And you know, for 20 years, the American Space Museum has been preserving the birth of the American space age in our museum through our proud nonprofit foundation, the U.S. Space Walk of Fame. And no chapter of American space history is greater than the Apollo landings. After all, just 6 successful moon landings, the last one 49 years ago, those 6 successful landings happening from July 69 to December 72, a mere 41 months of history that completely changed our world, not only technologically, but also mentally and psychologically when we saw the Earth for the first time as the beautiful blue marble. So we hope that you enjoy our programs on Stay Curious, and this one particularly is an audio-visual scrapbook of some of the photos that you rarely see of Apollo 17. And you can find them on flickr.com, and I'll tell you about that in a second. As I wanted to point out, behind us is the beautiful mural of the Lunar Orbit Rendezvous that John Hobalt convinced NASA was the way to go instead of taking just a rocket straight down to the surface and landing the same rocket and then launching off with the same rocket. He said you had to rendezvous had two vehicles, one to go down to the surface, come up and rendezvous with the mothership type of thing. And that was adopted in 1962. You'll even see this chart available at Home Designers. Will offer a similar chart to put over your couch because NASA artwork is now considered worthy for interior designers for offices and homes and other spaces like that. So if this looks familiar to it, maybe you saw it on a Facebook feed where they were trying to sell you a mural like this, because I've seen it several times. We're glad that you're joining us on Facebook Live and also on YouTube and Twitch, which is a vehicle for gamers out there. And our favorite gamer is Jessica Galloway. Hi, Jessica. Our Trekkie Techie is away from the desk today, and Marty and I are kind of going on our own today. Thank you for all your help, Jessica, in taking this program to a new level. I know our Stay Curious fans throughout the last year and a half really appreciate it, and we're going to see more things today because of it. Well, let's talk about let's go back this way. I'll get those, Marty. Let me go through I'm going through the backwards way there. Okay, we're looking at my pictures racked up backwards. Sorry there. Get a little quick preview. And what we want to show you here these are all rare photographs that are on Flickr. Okay, Flickr is the some of you use Flickr for your personal pictures. The NASA asked Flickr to put up all of the scanned images that they did of the Apollo film, and I'll talk about that here in just a second. As we first want to talk about the Apollo 17 mission and the logo. Like all logos and mission artwork, it has a meaning to it. And the meaning behind this artwork is obviously very clear with the United States eagle and so forth there. But did you know that the image of Apollo is Apollo Belvedere, that is a sculpture in the Vatican museums? And this design was done by the great artist Robert McCall, who has passed away. In fact, the last thing Robert McCall worked on was the Space Transport System 133 patch that Nicole Stott, our friend at the museum, was an astronaut aboard that 133. He actually started it, and Tim Gagnon, a friend of our museum, finished the 133 logo. But this logo here has the meaning of America, the three astronauts, Saturn, and the galaxy represent our conquest of the moon. We'll go beyond that into interplanetary missions and so forth. And everybody remembers what the first man, Neil Armstrong, said on the moon. That's one small step for a man, one giant leap for mankind. Um, and Harrison Schmitt was the 12th man to walk on the moon, and he had something poignant to say, and it related to the name chosen for the lunar module, Challenger. It was going to be considered calling LM12, calling it Heritage, because they wanted to honor the American public for their tax-paying dollars that financed the Apollo programs. Apollo 17 was the last one. They canceled 18, 19, and 20 to save the money for the shuttle program, though all the hardware was built and some of it even shipped. And now those are museum pieces that many of us have seen. And they called the command module America, appropriately enough. That was an easy choice. But the lunar module ended up not being Heritage, it ended up being Challenger. And when the 12th man to walk on the moon, Harrison Schmitt, stepped on the surface, he said this, quote, "I think the next generation ought to accept this as a challenge. Let's see them leave footprints like these," unquote. And Mr. Schmitt, we hope that you live to 90 years old, because he's 86 today, when America lands on the moon, hopefully by 2025, is what NASA Administrator Bill Nelson is now saying in the latest update. And certainly hope Schmidt's alive to see that. Our Stay Curious programs, we've had 3 programs. This will be the 3rd program on Apollo 17. Several episodes ago, we talked about my encounters with Harrison Schmitt personally, from meeting him at a urinal, at a men's urinal, to following him at an event for 3 days, and just a great person, and some neat stories I have of hanging around him for a while. And then we talked about the Lunar Orbit Rendezvous concept that John Hobalt brought to the table on that. And today we're going to show you pictures of the Apollo 17 mission, not the classic ones that everybody sees with Gene Cernan and the flag and the Earth in the background and some of the classic ones. We want to show you pictures that are on a site called Flickr. And several of them, of course, are all the astronauts. Here's Ron Evans. He was the rookie on board. Of course, Harrison Schmitt was a rookie with twice flown Gene Cernan as the commander. And unfortunately, about 16 years after this picture was made, when he was age 56, Ron Evans died of a fatal heart attack in his sleep. And that was a sad day. And here's Gino and Schmitt. Jack is his nickname, Harrison Jack Schmitt, who later became a senator for one term in New Mexico. Here they are, happy to be in the command module. They're cleaned up, or they'd have smudges of that very fine, finer than talcum powder moon dust on them there. So now we talked about Flickr has on its website over 200, where's that number I wrote down? They have 15,800 individual photos from Apollo 7 through Apollo 17. No Apollo 1 pictures on there, unfortunately. There might be some Apollo 1 of Gus and the crew in the training photos that are included in these. These all were taken with a Hasselblad camera, one of the best state-of-the-art film cameras of the day, with some super thin film so they could get a lot more pictures on the rolls, if you will. And the rolls of film, when they were loaded, they took a shot in the laboratory of this slate, we call this in photography language. This is a color coordinating slate. Each of these rolls of film have this on there so that they can color balance the rest of the film later and know what the value of that emulsion, that light sensitive emulsion on the film is. Because from film to film, roll to film, just to jump up and throw themselves into it, because these lunar suits at the time were the state of the art, but they didn't bend as well as our Artemis spacesuits are going to be. So there was really wild to get on there. And we're going to see a picture of Gene here in a minute where it looks like his chair is a little bit broken. But I wanted to show you that all the bad shots are broken. But I wanted to show you that all the bad shots are on there. And then we have the great shots that you'd like never seen before. This is the backside of the lunar module uh, and of Challenger with some of that is the backside is quad 3 and the other side's quad 4. You see the ladder on the left, to the left of it's quad 1. And I only know that because Marty taught me that. And he worked on the Grumman lunar module and got inside of that top part, the ascent stage, to do his job many a time. And here's an unusual picture that even I hadn't seen. And I asked Marty, what is that white little thing standing there? Is it, and he actually didn't know, didn't want to put him on the spot. Apparently, I would say some of the ALSEP, the Apollo Science Lunar Experiment Package, may have been affixed to that, Marty, or something like that. Any clue looking at it again?
No, not really.
But
Came from ALSEP,
But yeah, it's something to do with the ALSAP. They're in the back of the rover. They're on the back of the lunar module. The rover's been deployed. The antenna's out for it. The lunar rover had its own camera and its own communication system with an antenna, so that wherever the astronauts were, we had live pictures, and you can see those on YouTube. Hope you're watching us on YouTube or Facebook Live or Twitch. And if you are, please like, share, follow, and tell your friends to subscribe to our programs, because we feel we bring you some interesting things right from our museum. Items that are one of a kind. Like see some of those straps laying around there. We have a few of those straps in a little business card, 1-inch piece of that is quite a keepsake. And Marty, I've stuck this in here just for you because you rarely think about that human beings are human beings, and when they put things on something, not always does it look space age. And here's the United States flag and the words United States kind of cumbersomely taped a little bit on there, Marty. And what kind of tape was that you adhered that to?
It's Mylar tape, but the flag's put on there correctly. It's just that Inconel shield is very flexible.
Okay. The shield that this is on, he says, is real flexible and hard to stick stuff to there. And you can see where it undulates there. And this is the shielding of this would be on the descent stage that boxes the descent stage in there. But Marty, such pride in our country and our work everybody had. You wanted to put our names on there. And we won't go into it now, but hint, hint, some of our workers around here may have their name on the lunar surface written in something that they put on one of these lunar modules to say Kilroy was here, as we all like noting that we were there. And most famous is Apollo 11 did have a sheet of Mylar that everyone had signed, including Marty, with the official ink that is allowed on the spaceship. And when the cat got out of the bag out of that, they kind of NASA management, grumbled a little bit about it. But I tell you what, any person working on a spaceship has probably put their names on it somewhere in there.
It's actually called H-film tape. Just remember that.
Called what?
H-film.
H-film tape on there. And you can kind of see, I'm not going to say that's like me putting it on there, a messy job, all right. But it's interesting, Marty, that they wasted a frame of film to take this shot in a way. And when we go back to the moon, I just wanted to mention that I said over 15,000 pictures are on Flickr, including this one of the lunar module and the Earth. These are raw film scans, very high film scans that Johnson Space Center did. And, when we go back to the moon, they're going to take 15,000 pictures in one day of just the one mission. There'll be so many cameras on that. And that's always the joke I make is I think Apollo 11 brought back 97 photos, folks. And I've seen more pictures of vacation meals of my friends than they brought back, posted on Facebook, than they brought back from the moon. So, well, let's look at a couple other neat pictures there. Of course, the landing on the moon will be among 4 other sites were in consideration, but because the 5 other landings had gotten some material back from those areas, they decided to go to this area because there was a lot of old rocks there. And Al Worden, when he was going over the moon and orbiting it on Apollo 15, said he thought signs of volcanism were over this area. And so they wanted to get old moon soil and fresh moon soil, and they accomplished both in this. The mission broke several crude spaceflight records that probably won't be broken until we go back to the moon. And how many times did NASA Administrator Bill Nelson say we want to go back to the moon? 20? No, 10. I think 10 missions, he said, were planned to go back to the moon. Well, this mission was the longest moon landing on the surface, the greatest distance that human beings have traveled in a spaceship from their mothership, okay? Whether it be an EVA, or extravehicular activity on the space shuttle, or a Skylab or whatever. They were, of course, in their self-contained EVA suits that were keeping them alive like their own mini spaceship. And they walked around 4.5 miles. They drove 4.5 miles away from the Lunar Module on their second extravehicular activity, EVA, and that is the longest distance any human has been away from their home base. They also were on the lunar surface the longest of anybody, almost a full day, 22 hours and 4 minutes. That's EVA activity, 3 7-hour moonwalks. They brought back 243 pounds of the moon, and they stayed 6 days in lunar orbit, all right? They stayed a day before and a couple days afterwards. And the most lunar orbits, 75, is what Apollo 17 has set the record on. Well, here's an interesting picture that is, we know that is the commander, Gene Cernan, because he's got a red stripe on his hat and over around his arms. Apollo 11 and Apollo 12, they couldn't figure out who was who except 11. They knew all the pictures were, Armstrong had the camera all the time, except 1 or 2 pictures. So they knew that all the pictures were Buzz. But they weren't so sure on Apollo 12 because they both had cameras. So on Apollo 13, they put a stripe on the helmet and on the arms and on the legs so you could tell who the commander was on the surface of the moon. Of course, Apollo 13 didn't make it, so Apollo 14 was the first time we did this. Now look at Gene's helmet. Marty, give me that arrow up there, up to his helmet, because I want you all to notice that Cernan was basically the geologist geologist helper while on the surface of the moon, though he was the commander. He was definitely somewhat the geologist helper, and definitely Jack Schmitt was sort of the commander of all the operations on the surface because he was leading the geology team, and he was a geologist before he became an astronaut. Now look at Schmidt's helmet there, where he's got tricked out some shades on there. You can circle that, Marty, to emphasize it. He's got some shades around that Gene doesn't have on his. See there? And let me go back to Gene's there real quick. You see, he doesn't have that extra visor there that Schmidt's got on there, plus that little cool-looking other shade on there. So the guy knew what he wanted to do on the moon, and so bright and looking at rocks up close. Also notice on his hand, he has his checkout list, and he is filthy. All right. What happened on the first EVA was a fender broke on the right rear. It didn't break. Actually, Gene walked around it and his hammer caught it and ripped off part of the fender. When they started driving the lunar rover, it threw up a big rooster tail of dirt that just covered him from head to toe. And this is one of the problems going back to the moon is the lunar soil is so, I mean, it's finer than talcum powder. It seems to want to adhere to everything. And I'm not sure if that's an electrostatic charge or not. And so this is, the Artemis program is working on this because it'll gum up the works of gears and so forth like that are on the moon for a long time. But I wanted you to point out there their gear. And there is, we've seen that one already. And I want to give you these 2 pictures back to back. The photographs on Flickr are raw images, all right? And here is their raw image. And then the next image, I've enhanced it slightly. See how the moon suit looks darker, and look at the mountain in the background. Shows more contrast by me just pushing a few dials. So you can do what you want with these photos because NASA has given you permission to, posting them on Flickr. After all, the American space taxpayers paid for it. And by the way, that is the antenna for the camera that is on the rover. And those they are still there. And as far as I'm concerned, you probably put new batteries in them because they were battery charged, nickel hydride batteries like we use today. Here's another interesting photograph showing you, which is obviously Gene took this because I don't see the red stripes on that astronaut back there. Give you an idea of the lunar module again from a different perspective. And the camera that was on the lunar module. And there must be 25 pictures of this almost same picture. Now you wonder whoever was shooting it, did they jam it or something go wrong, because there's too many pictures of this, too many wasted frames when you see the whole strip of frames there. But they moved this lunar rover at the end of their third EVA and moved it far enough away that it could get the blast off of the Challenger leaving the surface of the moon. And we're going to show that when they leave the moon on December 14th. Marty, we've got a comment?
Yeah, Christopher Mick made a comment. John Young to the rescue with the fender plan. John came up with it.
Who mentioned that?
Christopher Mick mentioned.
Yeah, Christopher Mick in Wisconsin. How you doing, buddy? Hope you're all ready for a nice snowy holiday in Wisconsin. He's absolutely right. When they went back into the lunar module and rested and took off their spacesuits to relax a little bit and catch some sleep, Mission Control was already on top of how to repair that fender, and who better than the commander of the mission before, John Young, figured out that they got to take a couple of charts that they weren't going to use and clamp them together. They tried to tape it with duct tape on the surface of the moon. Imagine that. They've got duct tape, Marty, in their little kit there, right? And Marty's going, yeah, they sure do. Was it the silver kind, or did they have the Apollo logo on it or something? It was a silver kind of duct tape that you take, and 200 degrees in the sunlight and 200 below in the shadows, but there's an ambience that goes. It kind of mixes up a little bit as you move around there. But they tried to tape it, and the dust just wouldn't hold it. And so everywhere they went, they're getting flying in the air with this dust on them. So John Young came up with a solution to do that and radioed it to them. There was no fax machine on the Apollo landers. There was no automatic video inside the command module. Incredibly, they didn't have a camera inside the command module or a TV screen that Mission Control could say, here's what we're talking about, here's the list. Just like Apollo 13 had to build those carbon dioxide scrubbers from instructions sent up by word, and they built exactly like the engineers had built it 200,000 miles away. So that's kind of a bad picture I wanted to show you. Wonder why they took so many of them. When you go through them, you'll probably agree with me. Now, this is an interesting picture, Marty, that this shows one of the pyrotechnic devices called geophones that were placed on the moon. They drilled holes. They put the geophone is there in the center, Marty, if you want to get the circle on there. In the background are the other Apollo lunar experiment science package that were nuclear powered by a little bit of radio isotope put in the main thing there. He's showing me there. That's the radioisotope thing. We had the heat flow experiment, the surface lunar gravitometer, lunar atmosphere composition experiment, and the lunar seismic profiling experiment were among the main things there. But this little geophone, they drilled a hole, stuck these geophones in there, and they had a charge in them that was exploded after the astronauts left the moon, and seismic sensors that were put on the moon from Apollo 12, 14, 15, 16, as well as 17, registered the seismic activity to get a sense of what's inside of the moon. They can tell by the noises going on after this. So, Marty, I ask you, I've asked you this before. I'm amazed at the explosives that were aboard all of these spacecraft. And imagine packing explosives for, I think there's about 8 of these that they dug holes for and stuck in there to shoot them up there. Marty, any sense of security when you were around the lunar module packing it with this stuff?
No, I mean,
It was just everybody was. I
it
mean,
was safe because you don't hook it up with power.
Marty says it's safe because you don't hook it up with power, and they're the ones. Yeah, right. It would be not like a stick of dynamite. Certainly, that could go off on its own. I did want to mention that the results of these probes revealed that the lunar surface we're looking at there is called regolith, and it's like a fluffy, dry snow that Christopher Mick is so familiar with, and Dave Stang up there in Michigan. You get a dry snow. You, as a kid, you hated it because you couldn't pack it and make snowballs. It just fell apart. This is what the lunar surface is like, and it's churned up by micrometeorites, beating it down for thousands and thousands of years. What's a micrometeorite? Well, maybe dust on top of my monitor there. That is a micrometeorite, a dust particle going 30,000 miles an hour. If it hits my microphone, it's going to make a microscopic dent in it. And over thousands of years of this, tens of thousands, it churns it up. Millions of years. What they found out was, incredibly, this regolith is garden, like churned up and flipped over about every million years of that is bombarded. To a depth of about a meter, it's replaced every billion years because the moon's only 4.5 billion years old. So there is a kind of refreshing thing as stuff is hit and thrown up and then back down. But I love looking at all the footprints there, all the seismic things there. Marty, I know one thing I was going to mention to you was that we'll talk about that here in a second. There is the heat flow experiment, which famously John Young tripped over and ruined by pulling the sensor panels out there, those ribbon-looking things. And they fixed that so that would never happen again. But a lot of science done here, and these are laying right there where the astronauts put them. Some are still working 49 years later because of the radioactive thing there. And there's a picture out the window of the lunar module. Marty, is that the commander or the pilot's window?
Well, it looks like a pilot.
Pilot window on the right side? Okay. And there is the experiment package that they drove out there. Remember, Buzz Aldrin's carrying his out there. Well, all of them were carrying him out there, setting them up. Apollo 12, Al Bean, that was his job. And they kind of had a pole that they had on each end. Well, they drove him out there and dropped them off. And Gene was out there dropping the experiments off as Schmidt was putting it together on their first 7-hour EVA. And then on one of the excursions, imagine walking away that far away, that's probably a good 100 yards away from the lunar module, both astronauts. And that's an unusual photo. I've chosen some of the photos that even I haven't seen many of. And you can see on the upper right-hand corner is a little bit of the data on the film is revealed there. Like I said, these are raw images that you can use in those Rossio lines. See the little hash marks in there? The X's, those are called Russo lines. Marty, circle one of those. The Russo lines there. And that shows you the raw pictures. All right, that's it right there. And when they have that on it, that's the first generation of these images. And then they remove those in later photographic printing. Thank you, Marty. Now, I alluded to the fender coming off on EVA 1, and here is the fix that they did on that EVA. I don't think this is the final fix. That looks like the tape on it there, Marty. But what a problem that was, and look how dirty Schmidt is sitting in the chair there, and you can see that his feet are just covered with dirt, and he's got a lawn chair on the back there. Now, interestingly enough, David Scott and Jim Irwin were Apollo 15 on a lunar rover. John Young and Charlie Duke were on the Apollo 16 lunar rover. And, of course, Gene and Jack here. Guess what? The commander never let the other guy drive, okay? And I think I asked Jack Schmidt that one time, did he drive the lunar rover? He says, heck no. He said, the commander always drove the rover. But that was because they parceled out their duties. One guy drove and the other guy was the navigator, okay? So, but still, if I was Charlie Duke, I would have said to John Young, come on, let me take it for a spin around the limb just one time, okay, so I can say I drove on the moon. I mean, how could you resist not doing that? But because they're astronauts and they know every precious moment on the surface of an alien world is highly choreographed, and if they go doing things off script, so to speak, not only will they get in trouble, but they're going to get the whole timeline messed up. Right, Marty? It was very strict on those things.
They don't get grounded.
And they'll get grounded, yes, like the Apollo 15 astronauts did for the postal. By the way, the postal cover scam. Not scam. They took postal covers to the moon with good intentions, and NASA didn't know about it, and they didn't fly them again. Also, I wanted to mention here. It escaped my mind there. I'm looking at the dirt and thinking about the lunar dirt. And of course, China's brought back 4 pounds of their own dirt back in May on there. So the most, I know what I wanted to say, looking down here to note, was those of you amateur astronomer friends of mine looking for dark sky places, you know that one of the darkest skies in America is at Big Bend National Park in Texas. That's South Texas. And I got a lot of astronomy buddies that go out to Big Bend, and that is where a lot of training was done, okay? Also, they went up to Sudbury, Ontario, to some rock fields up there to do training, because those rocks were very bright like these rocks were there. So they spent a lot of time in the field doing things to just spend a few hours on the moon there. This is a picture that I never saw before. And look how scary that picture looks. It looks to me like that is Jack Schmidt without the stripes going up to the edge of this crater, and you hope that Gino's saying, "Whoa, Nelly, you're far enough right there. You might slide down that thing." Notice how the orangish tin covers an orange kind of hue covers this crater. This is where they found orange soil in glass beads of orange, a recent volcanic activity, recent meaning maybe within the last 1,000,000 years, all right? So very significant that Harrison Schmitt, geologist on the moon, knew what to look for, though all the astronauts that went there were highly trained and took it very seriously, their geology. Nothing like having an expert up there. And here is, everyone knows the famous picture of Schmidt standing in front of this boulder looking at it, but there's a series of 2 or 3 pictures where Gene takes a picture of him walking away behind this big boulder. This boulder was blasted out by a crater impact they think was over 200 miles away. And this thing was flung into the air. And of course, 1/6 gravity, you got to take that into account, and landed over 200 miles away from where it was. And these are the pieces that they took rock pieces off of it. And this might be the rock where Gene wrote his daughter's name Tracy in the moon rocks there. And there, of course, is our moon, La Luna, and Earth. In the same frame there. How could you resist not wasting a whole magazine of film on that? And the last picture of a human taken on the moon, Gene is taking a picture of himself, him and his shadow, before turning around and boarding for the last time a human on the surface of the moon, and that will be 49 years on December 14th. And me and my shadow, how about that? Look at our moon shadow. There is a true moon shadow, to paraphrase a wonderful Cat Stevens song there. Man always wanting to get them their image on the moon there. And there is one of the last photos taken outside of the windows, showing wherever humans go, we create a garbage dump, of course. And if you've ever looked for relics out in a desert, in a ghost town, you know that what you want to find in a ghost town is their trash pile, where they threw all the trash away. And usually it was a few hundred yards away from the main street town and so forth. Well, here on the bottom, you can circle that, Marty, because you certainly recognize the LPS, Life Support System, the Personal Life Support System, PLSS, Personal Life Support System. Let's get it right, Mark. And then you see the other things thrown there. I can't really recognize them, but when they climbed up to into the spacesuit, in the spacecraft, the lunar module, they would plug themselves into the spacecraft life support system, disconnecting the hoses from their life support system that's on the ground there, holding their breath probably, and plugging it in to the machines that are keeping them alive through their hoses of their spacecraft, with the doors open now, okay? And while the doors open, they take their backpack off, throw them out. They take their moon boots off, throw them out. However, they did bring back Gene Cernan's moon boots. Apollo 11 did the same thing. I wish we'd brought back one of Neil's moon boots, but they were so afraid of 1 pound of extra weight not getting them off the moon's surface. So you've got the cameras. These beautiful Hasselblad cameras are pretty heavy. They weigh a couple pounds each. Those were thrown out the door. Of course, with their garbage from their food and their eliminating their body eliminations and so forth like that are all on the moon, happily for someone to go find someday. And don't you worry, there will be some entrepreneur that, and I think there was a Japanese company already wanted to fly a rover up to the one of these landing sites, okay, and take pictures. NASA immediately, I think, has put through Congress a law that you cannot go to the Apollo sites are now national treasures, historic national treasures. You will correct me if I'm wrong, but I think there is some legal things done that they are national sites, and you cannot go up within a mile of them, supposedly. But someone's going to have an unmanned rover, and decades from now, maybe Jessica, our Trekkie Techie, maybe your grandchildren will one day take a tourist trip and be outside of a velvet rope looking at this scene here of the lunar module in there. You're going to take it yourself in there.
Based in the 1960s, it was $6,000 worth of silver in each one of the batteries, ascent and descent.
Oh, okay.
Almost 6 batteries on them.
Marty told me that in 1960 money, the amount of silver in the batteries that supplied the power to the descent stage and the ascent stages was worth $6,000 a what? Pound? Oh, there's $6,000 worth of silver in each battery, and there's 6 batteries.
Yeah.
So there's $36,000 in 1960s money in silver on these things. The gold foil, all that kind of stuff. So don't be a space pirate, okay? If you go up there, just take pictures. Don't steal anything. But someday humanity will look at this with their own eyes and just think about that out there, because this picture is 49 years old. Everything is laying there just the way it was. It will be interesting to see how much little bit of moon dust was on them there.
You can see the tire tracks on that picture.
Oh, yeah, the tire tracks are real good. In fact, this is a good example of a picture that I enhanced from the raw image that you can get on Flickr. It's very bright, and when you knock down the highlights and increase the contrast, you can really see the turning and the stopping and the walking around where they did on there. So
they're doing wheelies.
Mark mentioned when they were 4 miles away, they had to follow their tracks back.
yes, good point there, Marty. Another point, when they set the record of being 4.5 miles away from the lunar module on their second EVA, they had to make sure they had enough oxygen in their personal life support system to walk back. So when it was about 5 miles was the limit at that time frame, okay? And then they did a lot of work around there. So if they had to walk back 5 miles, they knew that they had a time limit to get back. So that was why they went just that far. And like Marty said, without any trees, telephone poles, any kind of anything as a reference, distances on the moon were incredibly hard to judge, the astronauts said. And so they literally, how'd they get back the way they came? Follow the yellow brick road, follow the way that you came there. So that was very important. And there's been some good science fiction shows where the guys are on the moon and they see tracks that they didn't make go in another direction or something like that. So,
Is that a Kansas joke?
pardon me?
Is that a Kansas joke?
Oh yes, follow the yellow brick road. Our Kansas Trekkie Techie here in there, right? No, that's from the heart. I love the Wizard of Oz, and I will follow the yellow brick road to get home. But that's but you know, you think about that as you're going on these excursions, and it was very difficult to judge distances with no known landmarks, okay? Because you don't know how big that rock is, and then when you walk up to it, you go like, oh my God, it's towering over my head, type of thing. So all right, there's our American flag, and finally, there is the final resting place, the Lunar Reconnaissance Orbiter is still orbiting our moon. I think it's in its like 20th year. This is an amazing, another amazing NASA success story, and it photographs all the impacts of the third stage rockets, the SR-4Bs that were after they put the astronauts on course to the moon. They didn't want anyone to run into them accidentally or hit the Earth accidentally, so they'd crash them into the moon. The Lunar Reconnaissance Orbiter took this close-up photo. The inset is Challenger, close up. There you can actually see the tracks of the rover. The far left is the ALSEP experiment. Marty, why don't you help me out there with that, with your circle there. The far left is the Apollo Lunar Science Experiment that still live. So they put that quite a bit away from there, okay? And then on the far right, Marty, is LRV. And that is there's the lander right there. And then on the far right is the lunar roving vehicle. That's where it sits right now today, a good 300 yards away from the lander. And you say 100 meters there is up at the top. So that's about 150 meters away, about 300 feet. And it took live pictures of the liftoff, which we're going to show that when they lift off the moon next week on there. Can't resist that. With controllers in Johnson Space Center controlling the joystick as it lifted up. And then they left it on for days, and finally the power went out, and they just had to shut it down on there. So actually, yes, someone's going to ask the question. Yes, we have seen images of the flags on the moon close to here because they cast a shadow. The pole casts a shadow, and it is strange that the flags themselves we can see on some of the images of Lunar Reconnaissance Orbiter, but not this one. They take them when there's a strong shadow, like an early morning or sunrise or sunset, so they can see the shadow, and they can still see the clump of the flag there, which solar radiation probably should have just turned them to shreds. For sure, the red is faded. As you know, every sign that you put in a window that's red is going to fade in time anyway. So, yes, you can see the flags only from the Lunar Reconnaissance Orbiter that's 60 miles above the moon with some high-powered telescopic type of lenses on there. You cannot see it from the Earth. You cannot see this from the Earth. You cannot see it with the Hubble telescope because the moon's too bright to put on the Hubble telescope. The sensors there are too sensitive, and they would blow out some of those Hubble sensors there. So hope you heard me whack my microphone there. Marty, this picture also reminds me, look at the lunar experiments over here, and several of them one of them dealt with the atmosphere on the moon, if there was any. And the lunar atmospheric lace, it's called. And then there was a lunar ejecta and meteorites dust experiment. Well, when that ascent stage took off the now launch pad that the descent stage is on, what happens with that fine lunar dust? It's going to blow everywhere, all right? So what good are those experiments? Aha! NASA actually had covers on them to protect from the material that would be stirred up from the LEMS liftoff. And those covers were jettisoned by ground command after the astronauts left. Again, another little pyrotechnics had to be built into these experiments to blast off the cover of it. Just so incredible, the things that you learn about these missions that you never even thought about. Pyrotechnics on an experiment on the moon that has to work for it to work after the astronauts leave. Just incredible how our engineers 50 years ago, folks, figured all this out, all right? And then that information disseminated into our world today where we have this extra brain attached to our hand that we call a smartphone. And you better believe it, the technology for that all started with successful NASA missions like this. So, well, we hope that you've enjoyed looking back at some pictures. Hopefully you saw some that you've never seen before of the Apollo 17 mission. And I encourage you to go back and look at Flickr. We need to get, we'll send Flickr this episode of Stay Curious to see if they can help us out, just like so many of you have helped us out in this season of giving. If you need a healthy tax deduction, we're the ones that you can get one from with your contribution to our American Space Museum. We're going to put up there our promotional logos. We'll put your logo here, your name here, your picture here. We're creating a new constellation of giving. Jessica's in it because of she and her husband contributing well financially to help us buy a video card for our new computer that came via the Marie Louise G's West Endowment. And we're anxiously looking to add some more stars to this constellation that we can't reveal until we get a few more contributors from Aerodyne. Thank you. And Andy Allen, astronaut, his brother, contributed. Andy Allen, of course, is over Aerodyne.
I think there's
And
room for 12 more.
And we've got we got room for 12 more, over $100 contributors. Come on, you get the tax break. And we might even send you some swag. At the beginning of the year, we're going to start doing a little more PBS type promotions because you all feel that it's worthwhile to stay curious. So we're going to keep you curious. So
Get you.
that's right. So we are so grateful here in the holidays for everybody taking their time to watch us. When you have downtime from your job and family, this Christmas holiday season and New Year's Eve and Hanukkah, and if you enjoy Festivus for the rest of us, God bless you. Okay. We want you to watch our programs on YouTube and run up a few of those programs because we need to get 10,000 viewing hours up there. And our YouTube page really looks cool thanks to our IT director, Bruce Jacobs. That's his baby. He's put a lot of effort into that. And it's taken us 3 years to get new material up there, thanks to Jessica and all that she's brought here at our museum. But also look at our episodes on YouTube. And those of you on Twitch, you can watch things up there for 2 weeks on Twitch up there. So it's so important that we reach out to you. Not everyone can come to our museum, so we bring it to you every week with 5 episodes, Monday through Friday. Thanks to Marty and Jessica and our whole staff here. We enjoy doing it. And of course, I enjoy doing this. It's a blessing that my friends know how thrilled and blessed I am every day to be involved talking about space history to a bunch of space geeks, because that's what I've been all my life. And we feel like we really bring you some different things and new things here. So tell your friends, let's get our numbers up big. Marty, you got a question?
No, just a comment. Chris Calley, great show, really interesting. And Mark Usiak, great show, crew.
Chris Calley, thank you for your shout out there. His father was one of the first Gemini artists that was allowed by the great administrator James Webb. That's why we put an A in STEAM education for art or astronomy or agriculture or whatever. With that A for. So A for effort. No, that's E for effort. A for awesome for us here and our staff here. Thank you all. It means so much that people like Chris Calley and Tom Usiak are following our humble little museum here. They get us. They understand us. Why don't you come and plan a trip here to the American Space Museum so you can get us and bridge the space between us. See you later with Triple T Friday. Don't forget.